one is automation. So we are going to understand this complete word in three parts. So the first one is robot. Now, normally when we hear robotic process automation, a quick thought that comes to our mind is that it can be some physical robot. But here it's not the case. It is a software robot that helps you automate your task. So UiPath is one of the RPA tool in the industry. Now, robotic, an entity that has capabilities to mimic human actions. So this software robot will be performing the actions that a human normally does while using a computer or a website or a desktop application. So here the term robotic means an entity that has the capabilities to mimic human actions. After that, let's understand the word process. Now process. Process is a sequence of steps that lead to meaningful process or task. So whenever we perform a process, suppose we want to create a presentation. So the process involves is opening the PowerPoint application, making the slides, saving the file, and that's it. So that is a complete set of process which involved three steps. The first one was opening the application, the second one was adding the slides, and the third one was saving it. So process can be understood in that way. So the first word was robotic, after that process, and now the term automation. So automation is task happens individually with or without human intervention. So what it basically means, the complete word now, robotic process automation is that we will be developing a software robot that will help to automate our process that we are performing. So let me give you some quick examples of that. So suppose I have an Excel file with students data, and what I have to do is I have to pick that data, I have to fill a form on a particular website or on a desktop application. So after that desktop application, I have to submit it and then again add the data for the second students. So suppose I am having 50 rows. Now if some person sits to do that, it will take him a long time. But using UiPath and the technology of RPA, what we can do is we can completely automate this process. So this is a simple example. Now suppose another example is you are planning to buy a new iPhone, but you want to see the list of currently available iPhones along with their price. So now you open Flipkart, you search one by one different models. What UiPath can help you do is automate that complete process. Now, how can you automate that? There are features in UiPath that can be used to completely get the data from the website and create an Excel file. So that is another very easy and example of what is robotic process automation and how you can use UiPath to automate your process. Now I hope the definition of the robotic process automation is clear to you. If you have any doubts, you can write in the chat section. We'll be addressing that at the end of the session, or else Anmol will be handling the question as well in the chat. So this was the complete definition of robotic process automation along with its simple example. Now let's understand very simple concepts of what are variables and data types. So variables in UiPath are something that can be used to store the data. So suppose I want to store the data 10 in some variable and use it further. So suppose if I'm taking the input age, input is asking the user for the value. So if user is entering his age, I want to store it somewhere and check it further. Like if that age is greater than 18, then we can show the message the user is an adult. If not, we can show the user is not adult. He is still below 18. So in that cases, we use variables to use them further while developing our software bot. So in that cases, we use variables. Now let's go towards some commonly used data types. Now data types, let me first explain you what are data types. Now data types are basically a type that you give to your variable. So suppose I want to store someone's name. Now name can't involve numbers. So name can be Parth, P-A-R-T-H, but I can't enter the name as Parth01, Parth02. So that are not the valid names. So to just ensure that we are taking the valid data from the user and user is entering the valid data, we have data types for that. So data types are basically a type that you give to your variable. A type can be a integer. The integer is basically a numeric value. let me show you some. So first one is string, which I gave you the example of name. So string is basically the name that you store, PARTH, or maybe my surname Doshi or someone other's name. So for that we have the variable and its data type as string. What if I want to store a number? For that I will use numeric. In terms of UiPath, it is integer, which you will be seeing in the UiPath Studio. Now after that we have Boolean. So Boolean is a data type where you want to store a value true or false or maybe 0 or 1. So if you want to check for something like if this is true or not, if this condition is true, or if this particular value is true or not, for that you use Boolean. It has only two values, that is going to be true and false. So these are the first three very basic data types. So I hope till now you understood what are variables and what is data types. Okay, one more thing. So I'm seeing some people raising their hand. Guys, you all can also type your questions in the chat sections. Anmol is handling that for now, and I will be also helping you all with that. Now going towards the fourth one, it is the date and time. What if I want to store the date and time? Now our date sometimes involves special characters, which our string will not approve, or neither are numeric values. For that we have data types that are called date and time. You can use that in your UiPath Studio. Now datetime variables will help you store the date. Now if sometimes we write the date as 20, so considering today's date, October, so 01/10/2020. Now this won't be accepted sometimes in your while you are developing the bot. So to ensure that we are accepting only the date and time values, we are going to use the datetime data type over here. Now after that there are collections. So collection are of three types. The first one is array, the second is list, and the third is dictionary. Don't worry if you don't know or don't have prior knowledge about any of them. I will explain them to you. So the array is used to store values of a particular data type that you saw above. So if I want to create an array, so I know like there are 10 students in this particular class. So I will create an array of length 10, which will store only the names. So I can have only one single data type for my array. And that will help me store all the names. If I want to store the roll numbers or employee IDs of the company, I can use array to do that. Now coming to the second one, list. So list is basically a complete collection that we define. Now how list and array is different. In list also you can have only one data type, but how list is different than array. List does not involve a particular length. As I said, if there is an array of 10 students, so I will have to define it as 10. But here in list you need not do that. It is a complete collection. In collection we can keep adding as and when we want. We need not define a specific finite number for that list. Now coming to dictionary. Dictionary you can see is a one step advanced version of your list. In dictionary we have key and value pairs. So key helps to identify something. So let's take a real life example. Has each door in our society has a unique key. In the same way, in dictionary we have each unique key for each value. So considering the house, it is some value which can be only accessed or which can be only opened by a particular key. We can't use all the keys in one particular door. So in the similar way, here it is dictionary. In dictionary you can access the values using your keys that you have defined. So this is one real life example that I could help define to help you understand the concept of key and values. Now after that the last one is generic value. So sometimes we are not sure what value will be coming. In that cases we use generic value, which considers the value to be either string, numeric, or boolean. So these are some common data types in our UiPath, and this was the definition of the variables. So I hope you got a very clear understanding of what are variables and what data types can each of the variables have. So I hope this topic is clear. If not, keep posting your doubts in the chat section. Okay. So now what we are going to understand is another and very basic concepts in UiPath. That is going to be types of workflows and different types of and different types of control flows. Uh, my voice is coming proper, right, Baswada?
All good, Parth.
Yeah, because I saw someone in the chat saying the voice is not clear.
No, it's all clear.
Oh, perfect, perfect. No problem. Thank you. Okay. So now we are going to understand types of workflows and control flows in UiPath. So now let's see first the types of workflows. Okay. See, okay, some common type of workflows. There was a problem with the animation. So the very first one is a sequence. So as we saw earlier in the robotic process definition, process is a set of tasks. Now that set of tasks can be a sequence. Now if I have a sequence, suppose open PowerPoint, add slide, and save the file. So this is my simple sequence. Here there are no conditions, nothing. I have to just open my PowerPoint, I have to add the slide, and I have to, and yes, you can do PowerPoint automation in UiPath. That is a very interesting thing you can explore later after you have good basic understanding. So now my sequence is very simple. Opening the PowerPoint, adding the slide, and then saving the file. So in that cases, we use the workflow sequence. Now the second one is flowchart. Now when do we use flowchart? So flowchart is used when I have conditions. So suppose if I have a condition something like this. Okay, so let's consider if there is some input we are taking from user. Suppose we are asking him for his age. Now once he gives the age, I want to make a decision like whether that age is greater than 18 or not. So I will add that decision in my flowchart. So it will ask the user for input, and then it will decide whether he's 18 plus or not. If he's 18 plus, he will show him some registration form. If not, then he will show him the message, you are not a valid candidate to apply for this role. So in that cases, we use flowchart where we want to give the definition. So at that times when you have conditions or when you have decisions to be made, you use flowchart. Now coming to the third point, that is state machine. So state machines are more advanced when we want to define some particular state. So suppose if I have some event to be triggered, if I want to say like if a value is changed or something, and in that case only I want to perform the steps. So suppose I have some workflow I have built. In that, what I want to do is if there is some value maybe more than 100 or something, then I want my process to go from one state to the other. So in that case, we use state machine. So state machine is a bit advanced concept that you might face problem in understanding, but when you go through the RPA Developer Foundation course, we'll try to explain here as well. But when you go through the RPA Developer Foundation course, you will understand in more detail. But state machine is basically used when we want to move from one state to other based on some event being triggered. So these were the three common types of workflows. Let me give you a quick overview of three of them once again so that it's more clear. Sequence is used when we have simple steps. Sequence is used when we have simple steps in our process. Flowcharts it's used when we have decisions to be made. And state machines are used when we want to change the state of our robot from one state to another based on some event being triggered. So in that three cases, we use sequence, flowchart, and state machine. Now we are going to see some common types of work control flows. So the first one is if else. So as I already explained that if my age is greater than 18, then what I want to do is I want to show user that form. If not, then I will show him a message, you are not a valid candidate. So in that cases, we use if and else condition. So this is one of the control flow that we use in UiPath. The second one is while. So I want to say while my this value is maybe less. So suppose I have a count variable declared, which is of data type integer. Now I am incrementing the count and I want to print it again and again unless and until the value has reached 200. In that case, I will use while. Now the next one is do while. Do while is used when I don't check the condition initially. In while, we first check the condition and then print. But in do while, first initial step will be by default performed even though my condition is true or not. So first that will be done and that condition will be checked. So in while, something is checked and then the process is being done. And in do while, something is done and then the condition is being checked. So this is the very simple difference between while and do while. And the last one is for each. So suppose what I want to do is, if I have a folder and in that I have 10 images, I want to copy, I want to mail each of them to different user. So in that case, I will use for each. So I will for each image in a particular folder. We'll see how we can define that. But just for the explanation and theoretical concepts, suppose if I have for each. So what I want to do is I want to mail each of the image to a user. So what I will do is for each image in my this folder, I will take each image and send a mail to the user. Now, if you sit to do this manually, you will compose a mail, you will attach and file, and then you will send. So now this complete process will be automated using UiPath, and in that you will use a sequence along with a for each. So I hope all these concepts are cleared and you were successfully able to understand all the concepts of common types of workflows and common types of control flows. Let me just give you a small walkthrough of all these 7 things mentioned over here in the slide again. So sequence is used when you want have a simple process without any decision making or state changing options. Now flowchart is used when you want decision to be made in your robot. State machine is used when you want to trigger some particular state from one state to another based on some event. After that, we have 4 types of control flows. Now, control flows are if else, while, do while. If else is used when we want to check some condition. If that is true, we'll perform this action. If not, we'll perform this action. While is used while we want to check some condition continuously and keep performing the action. Do while is used when we want to perform some action and then you want to check the condition. And for each is used to help you iterate or process one after the other the files, folders, or anything in a particular area or in a particular file, folder, or anything. So I hope you were able to understand all the concepts from starting from what is robotic process automation to variables and data types, and then further moving to different types of workflows and control flows. So now here we were successfully able to understand all the theoretical concepts involving starting from what is robotic process automation, very scratch, then going to variables and data types, then moving to workflows and control flows. Now obviously we can't understand something unless and until we see a practical implementation of that. So now here I have explained you all the theoretical concept, now which my friend Anmol will show you in practical how you can exactly do in UiPath Studio. Now, if you need any information with how to install UiPath Studio or how to get started with that, you can refer the RPA Developer Foundation course. We'll be showing you complete process how you can access this course, and it is completely free, so you can do that. So now I hand over the session to Anmol. She will give you a complete walkthrough of the practical implementation of all the topics we have understood. Over to you, Anmol.
Thanks, Parth, for such a precise introduction about RPA.
Okay. So now I am stopping my share screen and Anmol will give you a complete implementation walkthrough, guys.
So I hope I'm audible. So this is the UiPath Studio, where you will be coding or just dragging in the activities to automate the process or to automate any of your clerical tasks. So because I was getting a lot of questions on the chat about variables and data type. So the data types which just Parth explained, they are valid across all the languages. The syntax may vary, but the basic understanding about the variables and data type is same across all the languages. So before just starting in with the demo, I'll just explain how do you declare and how actually the variable and data types work. So suppose you have written this var a. So your a would act as the variable, and this variable is that you're declaring a variable which can be of any data type. So suppose if I have written string a, that means a would store the value which should be of string type. And if I write in double quotes, because strings are usually passed in double quotes, and character, you pass it in single quotes. So over here, if I write ABC, so that means this is the value that will get assigned to this variable A. So this is how usually the variables and data type works. So the variables are just used to store the value. And talking about the Boolean, so now suppose if I'm having a Boolean type variable, suppose I'm having ABC. So in that I can store either true or I can store false. So this is the Boolean type. Now we even have integer. So if I write integer ABC, so in this I'll be able to store only the numerical values. It could be 1, 2, 3, it could be 4, 5, 6, but there's a limit. I think it's 32767. Across that you cannot store it in integer. If you want to store a number which is greater than 32767, because that is the limit of the integer data type, then you can use long. So that is also a data type. So all this integer, long and double, they fall under the integer data type. So integer, long and double. So in the double, you can store the decimal values. So suppose I want to store 231.12. So this you cannot store in integer or long, but you can store this thing in double because there is a decimal in this number. Long has a limit greater than 32767. So if you want to store any number which is greater than 32767, then you can use the long data type. Talking about the alphanumeric thing, if you want to store, like suppose you want to store ABC 1, 2, 3, and you also want to store any n number of special characters. So you can store this in a string. So if I just write like this, string, so I can store this value which contains the alphabets, which contains the special character, and which contains the numerical thing. So I can store the entire thing in a string variable. Okay. So now coming back to the demo part. So first are we going to see the generic variables, how they actually act. So this is the variables pane where you actually declare a variable. So one thing you can do is you click on this and you write the variable name, whatever you want to write. You can change the data type from here. So all the data type that we have discussed, it could be a string, it could be an integer, it could be a Boolean, it could be a date time, it could be an array. So these are the default which you get, the Boolean, integer, string, object, and this array. But if you click on browse for types, you have a very bigger list of all the data types that are available. So if you want to choose any specific data type, you'll have to enter that data type here. Now suppose if I want to use a dictionary. So I'll just type in dictionary here and I can choose from here the data type of the dictionary. So now because dictionary operates like we have a key and we have a value. So there has to be a data type of key also, and there has to be a data type of value also. So now suppose I want the key to be a string and I want the value to be an integer. So how I'm going to assign that? So because I've selected the dictionary from here, so you can see here it's system.collection.generic.dictionary. So I'll select string from here. So that means the data type of key will be string, and I can select integer from here. That means the value has to be integer. So now what I can store in the dictionary is, I'll store that ABC, which is the key, and the value is 1, 2, 3. So if I ever want to get the value of 1, 2, 3, if I ever want to get 1, 2, 3, so how I will get it is that if I access the key would give me the value of 1, 2, 3. So it's like in ABC, 1, 2, 3 is stored. So it's like if you will print ABC, the key, then you will get the value. So you can access the values with their respective keys. So suppose I have 3 keys like that. And I want to get the value 4, 5, 6. So if I actually access DEF, so that value, that particular DEF would give me 4, 5, 6 as value. So this is how dictionary works. Then also there are a lot of data types which you can use from here, but that will be covered later in the series. As of now, we'll talk about all the basic data type, how we can use it. Also, if you want to initialize or declare an array. So over here, you can see it's written like this, string, and you have square brackets here. So this square brackets actually denote array. So this whole thing actually means an array of string, an array of string. So which means what you can store here in this string array is that you will declare like this, curly braces, and inside that you can store a lot of strings. So array basically means a collection. So that's why this particular data type comes under collection heading. So if I write ABC, I can write DEF, I can write FGH, and all these can be accessed with the help of index. So it's like the way we do counting. So we count like, okay, this is one, this is one, this is two, this is three. But the indexing of array starts from 0. So suppose if I name this array, I will write it here. Okay. I name this array example array. Okay. And it is containing this value A, B, C, D, E, F, F, G, H. So the difference is that in string, we can only store either ABC, either DEF, or either FGH. But if we want to store all these strings as a collection in a single variable, so that means for that, we'll have to declare an array of strings in which we can store all these three values together. And if we want to access any of the values from this array of string, we can access it with the help of index. Index is nothing but the location. So usually if I talk about the counting like we do in mathematics, so this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. But as I told, in array, the index starts from 0. So this is 0, this is 1, and this is 2. So if I do that example 1. So this means get me the value at index 1. So you will get DEF. Let's see this practically. Okay. So I'll declare, so I've already declared the string array. I'll assign a value to it. So I'll assign the same thing, ABC, DEF, and GHI. Anything. Okay. Now suppose I want to get the value DEF. So what I'm going to do is, we have this message box and write line to display the value. So I'll drag in a message box. So this is the variable name, and I want to access the value at index 1. So if we see ABC is at 0, DEF is at 1, and FGI is at 2. So if I write 1, I will get DEF. So inside this, I'll write the index that get me the value at index 1. And if I just click on run from here, so we have got DEF as the output. Talking about the generic variables wherein we can store numeric also and we can store string also. Okay. So I have declared A, B, C, D. These are the variables. So if you open the variables pane, you can see that we have A, we have B, we have C, we have D, and all these are having values. And the type is generic value. So if we are storing it in double quotes, that means it is treating it as a string. If we are storing it without the double quotes, that means it is treating it as an integer. So the first thing what I'm going to do is I am adding A plus B. So which is that I'm adding 1, 2, 3, which is a string, and I'm adding it with 2, 4, 5, or let's check the exact value, 4, 5, 6. 4, 5, 6. Okay. So can anyone tell me what will be the answer? If I add these two strings, what answer will I get? And why? I'm actually not able to open the chat window. Yeah, okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes, so we'll get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 because it will act as a string concatenation. So usually what happens if we add 2 plus 2, we get 4. But that will not be the case because when we are adding 2 plus 2, we are adding integers. So that is simple maths that when we add integers, we would get 4. But when we are adding string, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, then we would get the answer as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What if I add a string and to it I add an integer? Then what answer will I get? Can I have the answer on the chat window? Okay, this will not be an error. Yeah, so yeah, we will again get the answer as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Why will it not be an error? It's because when we are adding this integer to a string, so it would then treat this thing also as a string. So the compiler would think that you're adding a string only. So it would add it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But when I'll add 1, 2, 3 plus 4, 5, 6, which is the same, that I'm adding integer to integer. So that'll be the normal mathematics. So this is the same thing which I've done here, that first I'm adding string to string. The answer which we would get is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then we are adding C plus D, which is integer plus integer. Then we'll get the mathematics done, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like 2 plus 2, 4. Then we are adding 1, 2, 3, which is a string, to 1, 2, 3, which is an integer. So we would get 1, 2, 3 and 1, 2, 3. So let's, because we've already executed, we can see the same here. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For C plus D, we got, because those both were integers. The other, we got it as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But if I talk about 2, 4, 6, so that is the mathematics was performed. This is because now what you're doing is, instead of doing this thing, so when you added 4, 5, 6 to a string, so this 4, 5, 6 was treated as string. But now when you're going to do this thing, so because to an integer you are adding this, so this will be treated as an integer. And again, the normal addition would be performed. So this is just, a concept building thing, that how actually the data types behave, and how can we declare an array, and how can we access the value of an array at a particular index. So the next one is that we'll talk a little more about array. Okay. So here again, the string array is a data type, you can say, and it is declared here. How you can do that is that you will give a name and try always to give a meaningful name to the data type. So suppose I'll create another thing, example array, and I want to create an array of integers. So you'll click on variable type. And you see array of T. So T can be anything. It could be any data type. And from here, I'll select array of integer I want to create, and I'll click on OK. So now what you're going to see is, instead of string, it would be written as int32, which means integer. So this is how you create array. So I've created an array. Two values are assigned, John and Doe, to this array. Now the difference between array and list, as Parth has already told, is that once you define array, you have to define a size, that you want to create an array of 4 size or 5 size, and which cannot be changed later. But in the list, what you can do is, you need not to define a size. Simply you can write like this. If I have created a list and I write dot add, and I pass in the value here, ABC. So I can keep doing this thing n number of times. I need not to define a size. So this is also a difference between array and list, and you can accordingly choose to that whether you want to go with array or whether you want to go with list. All this is covered in detail with videos in the Academy course, which I'll show you later in the session. And please enroll to it, complete it, so that you get a clear understanding. And with each session passing by, you will have better understanding and more hands-on. So what here I am doing is, I'm just logging it. So you'll get the message here in the console. So this is the output window. So when I'll run it, so the output would be written here. So I'm doing string array. So as I've shown that it would get the value at the 0 index, which is John. So it would get John here. Then I've written a space. So this is nothing, but if I'm writing ABC plus this, that I've given a space and then a double quote. So it would just be printed like, so what output would you get is, you'll have ABC, you'll have a space, and you'll have BCD. So this is nothing, just to make it readable, a space has been given. Now what I'm doing is I am manipulating that on 0 index, instead of John, put Jane. So that is how you can change the value at a particular index in an array. And then string.join. So these all are string manipulations, which will later be covered in detail in the coming sessions. So string.join, what it does is it would just join in. So we are joining it with space and we are joining the array. So if I ever write that string dot join and I say join ABC and join BCD. So the output would be ABC, BCD. So this would be the output. It would just join in both the strings. Okay, so if I just run this, or you can even run it in debug mode, that is also a feature or an option given in the UiPath Studio. So you will be able to see the values here in the properties pane. So I'll just run it so that you know how to debug. So if you click on step into, so the control would come to the first activity, which is an assign activity. So we have got the control here. And as we click on step into, so we can see all these things here in the locals pane. So if I click on step into, and if I click on string array, so you'll see that John and Doe are there in the string array, and this 2 is the length of the array, which is 2. So you are having 2 elements, so the length is 2. Now this is a log message, so that will be printed here in the output pane. So if I click on step into, so you have got this John Doe printed here. Now again, if I click into step into, so this particular assign where I am changing the value of John to Jane would get executed. And we can see the result here, this thing would get changed. So if I click in, so you see, now John has been replaced with Jane. Now again, the log message would be executed and you can see the output in the outputs pane. So we've got Jane Doe now. So this is how you can manipulate with arrays. There are a lot of string manipulation functions present. You can use them in UiPath Studio also. Okay, so now we'll talk about the workflows. So if you go to design tab, you can see here the new option. If you just click on this button, then these are the 4 type of workflows which are present. Sequence, which is basically used to do the task that we want to execute in succession, that is one after the other. So we do not put any logic or branch logic wherein the control has to decide that whether to execute this or whether to execute this. For that, we have flowchart. So the first is sequence. Okay, I've clicked on to create. So the first is sequence. So the decision trees, which I was talking about, that in which you have to decide that whether to execute a particular set of sequence or activities or whether to execute another set of activities. So for that we have flowchart, but if we want to execute anything in succession, we use sequence. And state machines, that when you have to decide that on a particular condition, I have to go or transit to another state. So for that, we use state machines. Now there are 2 things in state machine. You can have an initial state from where the whole execution starts, and then you can keep switching on the states based on the condition. So there can only be one initial state because the starting point has to be only one. But the final states or another states, they can be of n number. So we'll see that in practical. And another one is global handler. So that'll be covered later because it is a little complex and it's better that first you have an understanding and then post that we'll cover global handler in the upcoming sessions. So we'll start with sequence. So I'll first execute and you'll get to know that what actually this particular sequence is, how it is working. And then post that, I'll explain that how can you implement that. So I'll click on run. So I have got a pop-up, or you can say a dialog box. So I'll enter the first number. I'll enter 25 and I'll click on OK. I have to enter another number. So again, I'll enter 25 and it will perform addition. You can see here it is written add two numbers. So it will add 25 plus 25. It would be 50. So result is 50. So because all these things have to be executed one after the other, that first you will ask for the first number, then you'll ask for the second number, then you'll add it, and then you'll give the answer. So input dialog box basically is used that if you want any input from the user, for that input dialog box is used. So add two numbers, that is the title of your input dialog box, you can define here. Instead of adding, I want to go with subtracting, and I'll say subtract two numbers. And here you'll mention the label that enter first number. Then similarly, I'll add, instead of add two numbers, I'll write subtract two numbers and enter second number. Then here I have that I'm adding it, but now instead of adding it, I'll be subtracting it. So let's drag in and assign. We'll create a variable. So the shortcut for creating variable is, if you don't want to go to the variables pane, click it, open it, and then you create variable. So there's a shortcut. You can press Control K and you'll get this thing set var, which is set the variable. So I'll say subtract result and enter. So our variable will automatically be created in the variables pane. So if we see, so we have subtract result already here. We have to make it integer because the result of the subtraction has to be stored in an integer value, integer data type. And now instead of adding it, we'll do num1 minus num2. We can even place that logic that suppose a user has entered. Let me explain it here. So that logic can also be placed here, that suppose if I've entered num1 as 20 and I've entered num2 as 10 or as 30. And when I'm doing num1 minus num2, so that'll be minus 10. So if we don't want to get the answer in minus, then we can even place that logic that check which number is greater and then keep that number first, so that you get 30 minus 20 is equal to 10. That can be achieved with the help of control flows. We can use if else in that case, which we will cover definitely, but I'll still tell the syntax. So it's like, we'll first check that which number is greater. So we'll check that if num1 is greater than num2. So in our case, that is not the case. Num1 is not greater. Okay. So then what we're going to do, we'll say then the result should be that you subtract num2 minus number 1. Because in our case, the number 2 is greater. Else. So there can only be two possibilities. Either num1 is greater or either num2 is greater. So now here, if num1 is not greater, if it is greater, then this will be executed. If it is not, then this will be executed. So here we can do num1 minus num2. So accordingly, it will check the condition, and whichever condition is true, it will execute that. So it won't execute both the blocks. So either it will execute this one or it will execute this one. So like this way, we can use the if else statement, which is one of the control flows, to process the things accordingly. So now if we want to run this, we can run this, and instead of the result, now we will be printing the subtraction result. And why am I writing .toString? Because in the message box or even in the write line, you cannot print in an integer value. So you'll have to convert it to string. And so .toString is nothing but a function by which you can convert the integer to string. So the difference between the write line and message box, if I talk about, so if you use write line, then you will get the output here in the outputs pane. If you use message box, then you'll get a proper pop-up here. So that is the difference. So I'll use both of them. And we can do this thing, that in the outputs pane, we will be printing the result of the addition, and in the message box, we will be printing the result of the subtraction. And let's run this. So let's enter the first number to be 30 and the other number to be 40. So I am giving the second number as the greater number. So we'll get the answer in negative. So we've got result is minus 10. So this is the result of the subtraction. And if we see the result of the addition, so we'll just open the output pane and we see the result of the addition as 70. Okay, so proceeding further. So now we'll see flowchart. So flowchart is where you have to decide that whether to execute this set or whether to execute this set. And that is all on the basis that whether this particular decision is true or false. So true and false are Boolean data type. So Boolean data type can have only two values. It can either be true or it can either be false. So I'll again execute this one, and post we see the execution, then I'll explain. So we get a drop down here and we have to select that what day of week it is. And I'll be selecting the wrong. I'll say today is Wednesday. And I'll get, oops, wrong choice because today is not Wednesday. And what if we select the right? That so now I'm going to select the right choice, that today is Thursday. And we got that, yes, it is Thursday today. So again, we have an input dialog box here by which we got that pop-up to select a day, but this time we got a drop down. And how we got that drop down is that I have passed an array of strings here mentioning all the days of the week. So again, I'm telling you, this all is covered in detail in the course, which I'll be showcasing you. Go through that course, you also get to practice there. Don't see the solution, try it doing yourself. So it will be checked here that whether today's day, so we got that using now.dayofweek.to string. So that is the use of function, which would be covered in the upcoming sessions. So I compared it with what the user has entered. And if they both are the same, so I have done this dot equals. So dot equals would just check in that the answer is matching, that what day today is and what the user has entered. If they both are equal, then there is a message box. So you see here, it is printing that, okay, if it is equal, that means he's right. So it is that day of week today. If it is not, then it is printing that it's a wrong choice. So flowchart can be sometimes difficult to read because you'll have to do all these branchings. And if the logic is complex, you keep on doing it. So it becomes a little difficult to read, but it is very, you can say, modular or easy to read if you have a lot of branching statements or if you have a lot of decisions to be made in which you have to either execute this particular branch or this particular branch. So those are the scenarios in which usually flowchart is preferred. Coming to the state machines. So as I told you that there can only be one initial state. You cannot have two initial states. You would get an error if you do that. So if I try doing it, I'll copy this and I'll paste it. So I did it simply by Control C and Control V. And you would not even get an option of, connecting this thing to the start thing because there can only be one initial state. So you would not get this option. But if I remove this thing, then you would get an option. So there can only be one single state. Or you can just right click on it and you can use set as initial state. But all other states can be n numbers. So I am having only one initial state, but I'm having two other states also. So what this particular thing is going to do, it's more like a game. I'll execute it and then you'll be able to see. So it's a random number generator. If I have to guess a number between 1 and 100. and that would be matched with what number the system has generated. It could be any random number between 1 and 100. So I'll just guess. I'll enter 25. So your guess is too small, try a bigger number. Okay. I'll again guess, I'll guess 65. Your guess is too big, try a smaller number. So it will keep on, this pop-up will keep on coming until and unless I guess the right number. So for that, because that is difficult to achieve, so I have already used a right line so that I see what number the computer or the robot has generated. So it's 53. Now, if I enter 53 here, this program would stop because I have guessed the right number now. So if I enter 53, so congratulations, you guessed correctly, the number was 53. So this is how state machine work, that there are transitions, there are conditions given here, and from here you can even change this thing, T1, T2. So how is this correct guess written? So if you just select this transition or this arrow that has been going in, if you just select this, you'll get a properties pane here. And from here, you can edit it. You say start of the game. So this is how you can change the display name. Also, you can even mention in the condition. So if I select this, so there is also a condition given here. So if my initial guess is what I have guessed, it is less than the random number. So I will get this thing, that pop up, that try for a bigger number. Your guess is too small, try a bigger number. Similarly, a condition is here also. Once I have guessed correctly, then there is a transition going into the final state where the program will stop. If I have not guessed the right number, it will keep on processing this. So that's where you see this thing, that it's starting from here and it's going back here. So it will keep on running this initial state only. So that's how state machines work, that there is a condition which you define, and based on that condition, you can go to another state. You can be in this state also. I can even go back from this state to this state, or based on some condition, I can even go to final state to stop the process. So usually in all the business processes, or you can say in the real-time projects, state machines are very helpful because there usually you have to take decisions based on certain condition. So you can make this transition going to different states to perform a particular set of activities. So these are the three workflows which we have covered: the sequence, the flowcharts, and the state machines. Now we will be seeing the control flows. So those are for each loop, if else, whose syntax I just showed, for each loop, then while loop, then do while loop. So we'll first see the for each and if, which I've clubbed up in the single program. And it's a very, you can say, an easy program. So because we've already learned how can we declare an array, how can we assign values to an array. If I just open the variables pane, you can see here it's the name of the variable is array. Its data type is an array of integer. So you see it's written int 32 and there is a square brackets which denotes it is an array. So the difference you can see in these two variables is that square bracket at the end, which denotes that this is an array and this is just simple integer data type. So the values have been assigned. So this particular array contains 752439. So this particular program, what it would do is that we will give an array of integers and the program would then calculate the minimum value and the maximum value in an array. So what I have done at the starting is that this minimum and maximum would at the end contain the result. But as of now, I have set these two values to be 7. And I can even change this thing. So let's change this thing. So setting it to the first value is nothing but just initializing it with a value. You can even set it to 1 or you can even set it to 2. So let's change this thing. So we'll make it 17. We'll make it 50, 42, 47, 13, and 90. So our minimum value would be 13 and our maximum value would be 90. Now what the for each does is that if you have a for each loop and we have this array 1 to 17, 25. So the for each would iterate, or you can say one by one would go on each item of the array. So it would first go to 1, it would then go to 2, it would then go to 17, it would then go to 25. And if I want to do anything which with each element in the array or with each value present in that array, I can do that using for each. So now suppose I want to add 1 to each of the elements. So if I do for each item, that is also, item is nothing but just a variable like any other variable that we have been creating till now. So if I do for each item in example loop, so or in example array. So this is the array which is containing all these values. So now suppose example array is containing all these values. So I'll say for each item in example array. So that means the loop would start and the first item would be 1. I want to say that item add 1 to each item. So what it would do is, and next, that once you have done it, move to the next item. So what it would do is that it would first get 1, it would add 1 in it, and that would become 2. Then next, because it has executed all these, and you can add n number of lines here. So once it has executed all these lines, then next, that means pick up the next item now, which is 2. So then what it will do is it would add 1 to 2, which would become 3. Then next, once all these activities, set of activities have been executed, it would then pick up 17. It would add 1 to 17 and that would become 18. Then 1 to 25, then 26. Once it has executed or exhausted all the elements in an array, this for each loop would stop. This is the same thing which we have done in UiPath Studio. So this thing that we are writing for each item in example array, then we are writing next. So how to write all this? This is the syntax of, you can say, of different language, and this keep on varying. That in some you will have to write for each, in some you can write for, in some you have to write semicolon, in some you don't have to, in some you have to write next, in some you don't have to. So you don't have to remember all these syntax when you are using UiPath Studio, because everything has been made easy. You'll just have to drag and drop. So you'll search here for each. You don't have to write any code. You'll just have to drag this thing and drop it here. So you've dropped it here. And you'll just have to mention the name of the variable. So you've created array, so you'll just have to mention array. You don't have to write anything. Item already has been written. The iteration would be done. The next also you don't have to write. You don't have to take care. You don't have to remember that. So you need not to worry about the syntax of a particular programming language if you do not know. You just need to have a hands-on, and you just need to have a knowledge that, okay, for this particular thing, I have this activity which will do the job for me if I just drag the activity. So that's why I was saying that you need not to have a lot of programming knowledge when you have to do the task using UiPath Studio. So this is, again, we are using simple if. We are checking that, okay, if the number is less than the minimum, then assign that number to minimum. And the same thing we're doing with the maximum. And at last, when all the elements of this particular array has been exhausted or has been completed, then we are just printing that what is the value in the minimum variable and what is the value in the maximum variable. So if I just run it, so we have seen that the maximum value would be 90 and the minimum value would be 13. And also because I am using for each, so we would not get that pop-up. Instead, we would get the answer here in the outputs pane. So let's click on run. Okay, so let's open the output pane because the execution has been stopped. So the minimum from array is 13 and the maximum from array is 90. So this is how you can club for each loop and if else loop to do the task you wanted to do. Moving to the while loop and do while loop. So there is a subtle difference between the while loop and the do while loop. So I'll again tell you the syntax. So while loop is like you mention here the condition. and then you can have here, you can say statements. So those statements can be n number of statements. So the do while has this syntax. So you say do, then you say while, and then here you write condition. And in between the curly braces, you write the statements. So this is, I'm telling you, a typical syntax that would work in any programming language. Some of the things may vary, but this is usually a typical syntax of while loop and do while loop. So the difference which you can see here, that in the while loop, first we are checking the condition. If the condition is matched, then only we are executing these statements. In do while loop, what you're doing, that you are coming inside these curly braces, you are executing the statement, and then you are checking that the condition matches or not. If it matches, then you will again execute this thing. If it does not matches, then you would not execute it again. So the difference is that while loop checks the condition before executing the statement, and do while loop does it after executing the statement. So it would first execute at least one time, the do while loop would execute the statement one time and then would check the condition. So for this reason, while loop are called the entry control loop, because in entry you have a control, you have a check that whether this condition is met or not. And in do while loops are usually called exit control loop. That means that while you are exiting the do while after executing all the statement once, then you are checking the condition. So this is the difference between after and before. How can this be used while we are automating? So suppose we are automating the example which Parth told, that you have to buy an iPhone and you have to check the prices. So you can do this automation that the price from all different sites, you get it in Excel or you get it somewhere consolidated, and from there you can see that which site is having the best offer. So suppose you have to click on search, or you have to refresh the browser if the site is not loaded. So you will have to keep on refreshing it until and unless the site is completely loaded. So that could be checked in a while condition, that if I want to extract the price or if I want to get the price, if the site is not loaded completely due to network issue or due to any reason, then keep on refreshing it until it gets loaded. So you can check that condition here, that okay, if it has been loaded or if price is visible, then it's okay. If it is not visible, then here you can keep refreshing the browser. So for that also, you don't have to do anything. There is an activity and you can just simply drag and drop the activity and that would do your job. So over here, we are checking if counter is less than 20, then do this particular set of task. Increment the counter and print the counter. And in do while also, we are doing the same thing. That if counter is less than 20, then increment the counter and print the counter. And counter is not, the value of the counter is not less than 20, it's 21. Okay. So because it is checking the condition in the starting only, it would not print anything because it would not go inside the loop, because while is an entry control loop. Let's wait for the execution to be completed and we will not be seeing anything in the outputs pane. Nothing would be printed because it is an entry control loop. It checked the condition here only, that whether 21 is less than 20. So no, 21 is not less than 20. So it would not go inside the body of the loop, would not execute any of these statements. But if we see the do while loop, so we're checking the same thing if counter is less than 20, and over here also the counter is 21. So though the counter is not less than 21, is not less than 20, but it would still execute the body once because it is an exit control loop. So it would print in the value. So we have got that the counter is 21. Okay. So yeah, we have seen for each, we have seen while, we have seen do while. We'll see switch also. So I'll just showcase you a folder here in which I'm having all these invoices. And if you just notice, so at the end of each file name, we are having the year 2015, 2017, 2018. So at the end of each, we are having the year. And over here, we are having the folders also with the year name. So what the program would do, it would pick up each file one by one, check that whether at the end 2015 is there. If at the end 2015 is there, move it to this folder invoices 2015. So if you are having hundred thousands of file like this, you would take a lot of time to segregate all this and keep on moving it in the concerned folder. But if you have written a code for it and you have automated this task, then that task would be done in seconds or in minutes. So for this, I've written a code here. So the switch case is there. I'll execute it to show that how actually it works. We have even used for each loop, then we even have used switch, we have used message box, so and we have used string manipulation and functions of string. So this is just to showcase that how the automation could actually ease your task. How can it actually be done? How you can use switch, how you can use string manipulation, that'll be covered in the upcoming sessions. But just so that you have an idea that what is the use of automating. So let's just run this. And also I'll just show you that all these folders are empty. They are having nothing. But once we have executed, all these files would be moved to the respective folders. Now, if I click on run, and if we just open this, so all the files have been moved within seconds. If we just see the execution time, it is 1 second. In 1 second, all those files have been moved. And a human would not be able to do that in just 1 second. So if we just see, so 2015 is having all the files that is ending with 2015. 2016 have the file ending with 2016. Similarly for 2017 and similarly for 2018. So that is how you can use the UiPath Studio, use the robotics process automation to automate all your clerical tasks. So now because we have covered how to use all these things, how to use the workflows, how to use the control flows, you must have a fair understanding that what actually would help RPA, what RPA would help you in doing. Along with that, there is UiPath Academy, wherein you can enroll for the courses, you can complete. As I've told you, all what I've covered is explained in detail with videos, with examples, and with practice sessions. So if you just go to UiPath Academy, there are n number of courses which are categorized in the complexity level also, medium, beginner, advanced, and also with different roles. If you are an RPA developer, there are certain set of courses for you. If you are a business analyst, there are certain number of courses for you. So with role specific also categorization has been done. So you can enroll for any course. Once you complete it, you would also get certification of that course. So a lot of content is present on UiPath Academy.
So Anmol, can you go on
Do check it out.
academy.uipath.com?
Then we have UiPath Forum.
Anmol?
Okay. So while you are learning, you might come across a lot of queries, a lot of questions. So you can post the same on forum. And there are a lot of RPA geeks who are present out there, who would respond to your questions with solution. So if at any time while learning or while completing the courses, if you ever have any query or you're stuck somewhere, you can post the same thing on forum and you'll get to have the answer of it. Also,
Anmol, can you hear me?
Yes, Vibhu.
So can you go on the Chrome or maybe just open forum.uipath.com or Academy, so that people have fair
I'll just
understanding.
open it. I'll open it. And also you'll get to know about the features, the new features which you're getting. So I'll just showcase. So this is academy.uipath.com. So here a lot of courses are present and the learning plan is. So all what I've covered, me and Parth, it is present in the RPA Developer Foundation course. If you just enroll, complete all this course, you will get to know a lot. There are videos also to explain you better. There are practice sessions also. There are solutions also, though I would not recommend that you go to the solution if you're stuck. Try doing it yourself. And once you complete this course, at the end, you'll also get the certification that you are already RPA Developer Foundation certified by UiPath itself. And a lot of courses are there. You can keep on, you can start from the beginner phase, then go to medium, then go to advanced. And this is forum where you can post your questions or your queries. You just have to click on new topic. You can create a query and your query would be answered. Then we even have Connect, UiPath Connect. So because the UiPath community is very big and full of innovative people, so this is the place where they can, upload or post their innovative ideas, and that'll be available for use to everyone. It would be available for public use. You can download them and use it. So this is about Connect. And also there's leaderboard on Connect. So as in when you upload any component or any reusable activity, people actually download it, use it, and give you ratings that how useful your component was. And accordingly, as and when your downloads get on increasing or you get on getting good ratings, your rank on the leaderboard would keep on increasing. Then we have community events. So for all such informative events where we all can learn and grow together, we have community events where you'll get to know about all the events that are occurring globally. You can enroll or RSVP for the same event, and then you can join the event. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you
We
so
have
much,
completed
Anmol,
everything.
and thank you so much, Anmol and Parth, for such an informative session. Guys, if you have any specific question, you can ask that question. And also, let's stop sharing, and if all of you can switch on your camera. So I'm sure Parth would love to take picture for all of us.
Definitely.
And do we have Piyush on the call? Piyush and one more person was there.
Bala
Bala
Nirmal, I
Nirmal.
think.
Bala Nirmal.
Piyush and Bala Nirmal. Okay, Bala Nirmal has this video on.
Bala Nirmal, can you say hi?
Hi.
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 Oh, great. Okay, so thanks for helping everyone. Who is Piyush? Piyush is still on the call or not?
Yeah, I think he is.
Thanks, guys. So if you see Piyush and Bala Nirmal, you're working or you are studying?
Yeah, studying.
Yeah. So see how Piyush and Bala and in fact Parth has just completed his graduation, but they have so much passion about RPA and how they are learning. So I'm sure these guys can really inspire all of you. And I will also be sharing LinkedIn link for all of us, for me, Parth, Anmol, and Baswa. Baswa, you're silent. You may want to say hello.
Hey, hi everyone. Thank you so much, Parth and Anmol, for the wonderful session. We had over, I think, close to
400.
400 participants, and the good thing is that we did not have dropouts any midway. So everybody have attended. Thank you so much. That's amazing.
So in case you guys have any specific question that or any suggestion for the next session.